Namaste. I will start with the prayer to Patanjali. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Patanjalaye Namaha. Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacha Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarottam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjalirānatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankhachakrasidharinam Sahasrashirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Pranamami Patanjalim Pranamami Patanjalim Om Shantish Shantish Shantihi. Namaste. I am Dr. Neil Kulkarni. My information is on adhiyoga.com, adhiyoga.com. And here we are studying Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. You should watch the first video in order to know what's happening. The only change which I am doing now is I am removing this as a formal course with a payment, and I am going to make it a free public session each time, and those who want to get certification from me or want to ask questions in detail apart from this particular session online, they have to contact me and go from there as a special course. However, I will continue this series of lectures online free of charge. Alright, so far we covered the first two chapters of this book. The first one was introductory section called Arambha Prakranam, where I gave you the information about what are the basic requirements related to a philosophical text and what they are in terms of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. One should know in particular that the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are written for a person who has understood that everything in the worldly life leads to sorrow at the end or dissatisfaction at the end, and therefore the person is desirous of liberation from the worldly life. This is called Kaivalya, and that is the intended student of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. In the second Prakaranam, that is section, we covered the basics of Sankhya philosophy, and the elements of Sankhya, and a homework was given where one is supposed to know the list of all the Sankhya elements. Henceforth, I will not be giving any homework because this is a online session and I'm not giving it as a student teacher form. Those who want to study with me for certification, they can do it separately. Anyway, it is very interesting for me to take this platform because on one hand I know the profoundness of what Patanjali has done. It is very difficult for an ordinary student to know the importance of what Patanjali has done and why Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are so important in the history of Indian philosophy of yoga. I would like to give some pointers here that prior to the Patanjali's time, yoga has been in vogue in various forms and variety of yoga practices were in place, and there were various yoga practices and various yoga practice goals prior to Patanjali. So you have to understand that there was something called Nishreyas, or the final good for human life, as understood in the Indian philosophy depicted in the Upanishads. Also, it was understood that some kind of escape from the worldly life should come. However, in the methodology of yoga, there were various practices, and these practices would lead to variety of results. For example, some practices would lead to physical health or mental health, or some of the practices may lead to some special mental powers. That means a person is able to do something better than other people in a profound way, so the other people get surprised. And there were some other things which also took place, such as other philosophies or other texts, such as Bhagavad Gita or Brahma Sutras, etc., or Ramayana, Mahabharata, and naturally there will be a common discussion between the followers of these texts and also the follower of yoga philosophy, and they are going to discuss. So many things must be happening prior to Patanjali, and whether one has reached a conclusion would always be under question. So I feel that Patanjali has succeeded in giving the yoga methodology a final form, and the form is so solid that there is probably no improvement done over that form. I have written a philosophy called Adiyo, which is different from Patanjali, and that deals with obtaining happiness in life, and it also offers samadhi state for those who believe that their happiness will come from samadhi state. However, that portion is almost identical with Patanjali, but in the yoga system which conforms to the Indian philosophical goal of Nishreyas, the final good or liberation, in the yoga methodology, it is believed or it is true that the conclusion was reached in textual form in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And in the Patanjali system, he has given a highly bound technical structure to the methodology, which has to be followed step by step, and one reaches samadhi state and then later reaches liberation called kaivalya. And this system is highly technical and it is written highly technically as compared to some other texts such as Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is not written technically, it is written very lucidly, so common people can understand it, and also common people can make different meanings for, and they become happy and they can continue maintaining their own understanding of Bhagavad Gita. A person can read Mahabharata or Ramayana and make his own meaning. Some people will think Rama was good, some people will think that he was very cruel to his wife, etc. However, in the Patanjali sutras, the system is highly technical and it is exact, and there is a perfect formula given, or the statements are made in a highly perfect or technical way. So it is necessary to understand the Patanjali properly in order to get correct meaning. Patanjali is not to be understood like how to keep friends happy and make living and all those things which people can follow different methodologies. In Patanjali, there is a specific technical structure and specific technical methodology which is given. Now, Patanjali definitely uses technical meaning grammatical Sanskrit, not a loose Sanskrit like Bhagavad Gita. He uses very technical terminology. So that terminology has to be understood perfectly to get the exact meaning. So on one hand, I know the profoundness of Patanjali's work, but on the other hand, I am making a statement which is highly challenging statement, or a slightly challenging statement, that there are improvements necessary in the Patanjali's work in terms of structure mainly, and in terms of clarifications or additions, which I think I wanted to make them, and that is why I published Patanjali Code. So I already covered 2 chapters. Now I am going to the 3rd chapter, and that's where the biggest thing which students of Patanjali or even the scholars of Patanjali will hit at one point during their study, that Patanjali's main sutra, the first main sutra about yoga is Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha, and this is the most famous sutra which is quoted all around the world in the yogic circles. However, there is one very important part missing in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is essential, and that is the definition of Chitta. Without understanding what the Chitta means, one cannot understand what Chitta Vrittis mean, and then the Nirodha of them mean. So, as far as my studies goes, there is no Indian text, either Vedas, Upanishads or anywhere else. Chitta is defined, and therefore in the technical form, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the Chitta should have been defined. That is why my next chapter, which is called third Prakaranam, is called Chitta Prakaranam or Chitta Section. So that is what I propose to cover today. So the first sutra 3.1 is Atha Chitta Prakaranam. That means now the Chitta section begins. Now the second sutra, I tried to define that Chitta, and it is given in Sanskrit language. This definition which I wrote, I was not satisfied myself. So I have changed that to what I feel is correct. However, I have not created the Sanskrit portion of this using the translator who helped me. So I am going to tell you what I mean by Chitta, and I will put the Sanskrit later in that book before I publish it. So in the last lecture, I covered what is called Mahat, and Mahat is also called as universal intelligence, and that is the first imbalance from the Mula Prakriti or root Prakriti. So in the root Prakriti, the three qualities of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, they are in perfect balance, and therefore it's impossible to know or perceive the Mool Prakriti. Then, according to Sankhya philosophy, the Purusha or the soul, or in Patanjali system called Drashta, it gets associated with the Mula Prakriti. That association in the Yoga Sutras is called Sanyoga. Drashtu Drishtayoho Sanyogo Heya Hetu, chapter 2. So this Sanyoga, it creates the imbalance in the Mula Prakriti, and the first element which is produced is called Mahat, universal intelligence. Now it is called universal intelligence because it is like a hole between the Drishya, which is perceptible universe. All the perceptible universe is called Drishya, and all the perceptions ultimately reach Drashta or Purush. So Mahad is the hole through which those perceptions reach the Purush. Now, the next portion, well, according to philosophy or philosophically or technically, philosophically and technically together, the Mahat is highly predominant in Sattva Gun. That means Mahat is highly luminous, and this luminosity comes due to the presence of Purush. So it is almost like Purusha creates Mahat from Prakriti, Mula Prakriti. Purusha is called Nishkriya, which doesn't do anything. It's only Drashta, it sees. But the presence of the Purush creates Mahat. And Mahat is not a material thing which you can perceive through eyes. It is a material thing as far as it is a deviation from Prakriti is concerned. But it is not material in terms of perception through the five senses. So you have to understand that it cannot be perceived by us. It can only be understood as an extension of Mula Prakriti. Now, the thing is that once the Mahat is created and Mahat makes perception possible, perception reach Purusha possible. That's why it is universal intelligence. That means it makes the power of Purush be used for human life. So you can say that in one way to look at it is that Purusha makes a person alive. That means Purusha makes person alive through Mahat. That Purusha goes towards Prakriti and produces Mahat. And now the person is alive. Alive means that person has perception. He does something and it is perceived. Because unless you perceive something, you cannot do anything. When you do something, you know that you are doing it. So Mahat is the universal intelligence which makes a person alive in a way. So on the material side, not on the spiritual side, on the material side, Mahat is what makes the person alive. Now anyway, now once that person is existing, the person's Mahat is existing. Now what happens is, the next world, one can call Mahat as a spiritual world of a person. Of course, Purush is the spirit, but on the existence or on the perceptible side, Mahat can be considered as a spiritual portion or most subtle portion of a human being. Now, once the spiritual portion is descended, the existence of the human being is mental, and we already know that a human being is called Manava or human, in Italian umano, etc. So the human being is a living structure of which the mind is most powerful. That means when we say a person exists, it basically talks about his mind. A person is good means he has good thoughts. A person is bad means he has bad thoughts. So the existence or personality of a person is in the mind. All the things which take place predominantly in the human life are dependent on the mind of that person, and that is why the mind is the most important part of a human existence. And Manava word is directly related to Mana, which is mind, and Manu is the predecessor of Manava. That means Manava is successor of Manu, and Manu is also a verb to mean think. So a person, a human being means mind of that person. That means if you want to improve a human being, or you want a human being to be disciplined or do whatever it is, you should always work on the mind of that person, not on the actions of that person. Once you change the mind of a person, automatically the actions will change. All the actions of the person are originated in the mind. Anyway, to conclude this, mind is the most important part of a human existence. Now, after the Mahat, the mind of the person is the most important part. Now, the thing is that this mind definitely has thoughts or whatever it is. It has memory, etc. So, all these things which take place in that mind are the modifications of the original mind. Because when the mind first comes into the existence, naturally there will be no modifications or there will be no thoughts. The very first time the mind has come after Mahad's existence, the mind has existed and our mind is created, and it will not have any thoughts, memories, etc. the first time. And that is what is called Chitta. So, Chitta is nothing but a mind without any vrittis or without any modifications. So, Chitta means it is a pure mind. It is also called Chitta Sattva. That means it has only Sattva Guna and no thoughts are there. So, it is predominantly Sattva, but it doesn't have any vrittis. So, pure Chitta has no vrittis. So that is why in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Chitta has to be understood from vritti side. That means one has to understand that there are Chitta vrittis, they are the modifications, they are the ones causing the problem, and those are one to be removed or stopped. Once you stop all the vrittis, then you are likely to go to Samadhi state and then liberation later on. So, the existence of the Chitta vrittis has to be stopped, and such a Chitta which does not have vritti is the real Chitta, and the Chitta with the vrittis is a Chitta with the vrittis, a modified Chitta. So, Chitta is a mind without vrittis. Now, I will tell you grammatically what it means. See, Chit means to know, and Chitta is a thing or a means of knowing. So, Chitta is the means of knowing, which is a noun. Chit means to know, and Chitta means a means of knowing, which is mind. Because a human being knows everything through the mind. And what it knows is the Chitta vritti. Everything it knows is the Chitta vritti. And that is passed through Mahad to the Purush. So the Purush Drashta is constantly watching these Chitta vrittis through the window of Mahat. Chitta vrittis are present in Chitta, and Mahat is the window through which Purush is watching all the Chitta vrittis. When all the Chitta vrittis are stopped, Samadhis take place and the Purush is realized. We will cover that whenever it comes. So I hope I explained to you what Chitta means. So the first sutra will say Chitta is the mind without any vrittis. Now I will not quote the Sanskrit sutra because I have not made it yet. Now third sutra, 3.3. Taduparaga prekshitva chittasya vastu jnata jnatam. This is coming from the original Patanjali Yoga Sutras, 4.17. Taduparaga pekshitva chittasya vastu jnata jnatam. That means any object is known when the chitta is colored by it. Otherwise, it is not known. So, what it means is that there has to be a connection between chitta and any object. Then only it is known. So, for example, this is one object called pain. Now, your chitta is not connected with this. Therefore, you are not seeing that pain. But my chitta is connected now when I look at it. As soon as your chitta will be connected, you will start seeing this pain. Now, in your video, you can see so many things and you had not seen all of them before I told you. Though some of them you were able to see them, you actually did not know them because your chitta was not connected. As soon as I tell you that there is a rope on my left side, this side, then you look at the rope and your chitta is connected with that rope. As soon as you look at it, you will come to know that it is black color, it is slanted, its thickness is such and such, etc. So, the rope or pain or myself, all these will be known, or what I am saying, all these will be known to you through chitta only. Without chitta you cannot know it. And that chitta must be connected with this object. So, taduparaga apekshitva chittasya vastu jnata jnatam. That means only when it is connected, it is known. When not connected, it is not known. So, this pain individually exists. It is not an imagination of my mind, like what is said in the Buddhism, Vijnanavad. It really exists because I am seeing this pain, you are not seeing this pain. So, your chitta is not connected with this, still the pain is seen by me. And the same pain is seen by many people. They know that this is 9 inches, 6, 7 inches tall. It's yellow color. So that means all the chittas are perceiving the same pain. And the pain exists separately from the chitta. Now, the next sutra, 3.4. Sadajñatas chitta vrittayas tat prabhoho purushasya parinamitva. Perceptions of chitta are always known to its owner because its owner, that is Purusha, is immutable. Now, look at this. This is Drashta and this is the Chitta, and in between is the Mahat. So this Chitta, when it has vrittis, then only we know that Chitta exists. Without the vrittis, we cannot know that Chitta exists. So Chitta is the means to know other perceptions. So other perceptions come into the Chitta. Chitta becomes Chitta vrittis, and Chitta vrittis are passed through the Mahad to this Purush. This Purush is watching them constantly. Now, this Purush is constantly watching them, and this Purush never changes. It always stays the same. It is constantly watching without any change. So, all the vrittis, whatever takes place, are known to this Purush. It is not possible that some vrittis are known and some vrittis are not known. All of them are known constant to this Purush. Because the Purush is never changing. It's constantly watching only. And that's all what Purush does. It is Drashta and it doesn't do anything else. It doesn't change due to the vrittis, etc. So this I explained in the first or second lecture that Purush is constantly watching and that's all he or she is doing. Sada jnatas chitta vrittayaha tat prabhoho purushasya parinamitvat. 4.18 original sutra. Next, 3.5. Natat swabhasam drishyatvat. Now, this is original sutra 4.19 of Patanjali. Natat swabhasam drishyatvat. That means Chitta is not self-luminous because it is knowable. Now, this is a philosophical truth which we are not going to detail, but it is obviously known that Chitta, it is not luminous. That Chitta is only a means. It doesn't know itself. For example, this phone is not luminous. This phone doesn't know that it is a phone. Somebody who uses the phone, they know that this is a phone because they are intelligent. The phone itself is not intelligent. So phone is a means of calling people, but phone doesn't know what calls are made and what we are talking. Phone is only a means of calling, whereas the person who calls or listens, they know that what the phone, what instrument, what communication we made. So all the chitta vrittis are passed through this phone to the person who is calling or listening. Similarly, all the chitta vrittis are passed to the Purush. Purush is not participating, he is only watching. Now, the chitta itself is not luminous, it doesn't know itself. Chitta is not self-illuminating because it is knowable. So it is a chitta can be known by the Purush. That's why it is a knowable object. It is not self-luminous. Now I will look at one question somebody asked. That name is Vikram Thomar. Chitta Bhumi effect on Chitta Prakaranam. Chitta Bhumi effect on Chitta Prakaranam. This is not a question, I don't know what to say. So it is not a question. I don't know whether it is a comment or what it is. Okay, 3.6. Eka samaye chobhaya navadharanam. This is original Patanjali Yoga Sutra 4.20. Eka samaye chobhaya navadharanam. So we just covered that Chitta is not self-luminous. It cannot know itself. It is a knowable for some other entity called Purusha through the Mahad as the window. Now, what happens is, Chitta is the means of knowing the perceptions to the Purush. But at one time, the Purush only cognizes the Chitta Vrittis. It cannot cognize Chitta and Chitta Vrittis separately at one time. So as long as there are Chitta Vrittis, Chitta is not cognized. So it is like I am constantly talking on the phone with somebody, Vikram Thomar, his name, and I will not know the phone. As soon as I stop talking with Thomar, I know my phone. Then I can keep it. As soon as I talk again, I forget the phone and remember what is talked. So in the same way, Chitta Vrittis and Chitta both are not known at one time. Eka samaye chobhaya navadharanam. So what it is trying to tell, Purusha cognizes only Chitta and Chitta cognizes the Vritti or objects. So there are objects which are cognized by the Chitta and Chitta is cognized by the Purush. Purush does not cognize Chitta and objects together. Now you can understand that these are Patanjali's Yoga Sutras in the 4th chapter, which I have brought to the front. Unless you know these about Chitta, you cannot understand the Patanjali properly. So these things about Chitta have to be understood prior to understanding the Patanjali's system. However, Patanjali has given them in the last chapter. which according to me is a mistake. But it may not be Patanjali, it may be done by the people after Patanjali. I do not know. Anyway, now the next sutra, 3.7. Chitera pratisankramaya stadakara pattau swabuddhi samvedanam. Chitera pratisankramaya stadakara pattau swabuddhi samvedanam. This means when the immutable Chiti, that is Purusha, when the immutable, unchangeable Chiti, that is Purusha or self or Drashta, appears to take the form of Chitta, the experience of cognition takes place. So, this Purusha, they are trying to explain the cognition. So, how the cognition takes place is very important. Why it is important? Because in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, you have to understand the Purush. You means the Purush has to understand itself. Until that is done, you will be caught up in the external world. So, in order to understand or in order to realize the Purush, this chain which is coming from outside towards the Purush has to be cut. So, for me to understand myself, I have to stop using mobile phone and I should not talk with anyone. As soon as I stop using mobile phone, I will know mobile phone. I have to stop using the mobile phone, then I will know myself, that there is somebody called myself. Until then, I will lose myself, and that is why the people who use mobile phone all the time, they will be losing themselves and they are lost. They do not know what's happening in their life because they are using the mobile phone. So mobile phone is a good means to understand what's happening or who is saying what outside, but that stops you from knowing yourself. So anyway, in the Patanjali system, in order to liberate yourself, you have to first understand yourself, which is the self-realization. It is not self-realization in terms of understanding what is your weight and what kind of thoughts come to your mind and how you get angry, etc. That is not self-realization. That is knowing the self's, your mind's habits or your mind status. Self-realization in the Patanjali system means you should know or realize the self, which is the Purush. So anyway, Chitera Pratisangramaya Stadakara Pattau Swabuddhi Samvedanam. So it is saying when the immutable Chiti, Purusha, appears to take the form of Chitta. So Purush, it never takes the form of Chitta, but it appears. It appears because it has a property of appearing. So there is a philosophical statement that the Purush is taking the form of that Chitta. That's how Purush is watching that Chitta through the Mahad. Now, whatever is happening in the Chitta is known to Purush. How? By taking the form of the Chitta. So it is like Purush is taking the form of the Chitta, and whatever is happening in Chitta, that is known to them. That's the cognition. So cognition means understanding of things outside Chitta. That means other than Chitta, which includes objects, everything, experiences, memories, whatever, or current thoughts. All these are understood by the Purush. How? Through taking the form of the Chitta. Chitera pratisankramaya stadakara pattau swabuddhi samvedanam. Experience of the cognition takes place. So now it is explaining, previously it explained the structure of Purush, Mahad, Chitta. Now it is explaining the cognition methodology or cognition process. So this cognition process of the external object has to be stopped. Now 3.8. Drashtu drishyoparaktam chittam sarvartham. Now this is Patanjali Yoga Sutras 4.23, which is 3.8 in my book. The meaning is Chitta being associated with Drashtru, self, and Drishya, knowable world, is able to know everything. Now in this sutra, Chitta is called Sarvartham. Sarvartham means it is able to know everything. Sarvartham means it is able to know everything. How? Because Chitta is in the middle. On this side is Drashtru and this side is the knowable world, which is called Drishya. We covered the Drishya last time. So Drishya is a deviation after Chitta. So entire things what are happening in the Drishya, including 5 senses, 5 organs of action, outside world like 5 elements, how they are doing, what they are doing, all these things, they are passed to Chitta. So Chitta is able to connect with them. On this side, Chitta is already connected to Purush. And of course, there is a whole of Mahat in the middle, but it's connected. So Chitta is the means of knowing. What is to be known is called Drishya, or what is knowable is called Drishya or knowable world. And who is knowing it is called knower or drashta or seer. So Drishya is Sarvartham, means it is able to know both. Now able to know both means it is not perceiving. Chitta is a means. So Chitta is the reason why both the sides are known. That's why it's called. So why? Because Uparaktam. Uparaktam. Uparaktam means connected. Chitta is connected to Drashtu or Drashta or Seer or Purush or Atma. And on this side is connected with the Drishya or knowable world or perceptible world. So that is why Drishya is Sarvartham, that is able to know everything. Sarvartham is able to know everything. That means Chitta is the main thing in the Patanjali. And Chitta Vritti is the main problem in Patanjali. And Chitta Vritti Nirodh must be done. That is the only yoga in Patanjali. That's why Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. All other yoga is not yoga, it's only a subordinate. All asanas subordinate, pranayam subordinate, pratyahar subordinate, dharana subordinate, dhyana subordinate. Samadhi is the first level Chitta Vritti Nirodh. And then Samadhi matured is the complete Chitta Vritti Nirodh. So Samadhi is the yoga. Samadhi. That's why in Vyasa's commentary it says Yuj Samadhav. That means Samadhi means yoga. Samadhi is a full concentration of the mind. And Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodh. Chitta Vritti Nirodh means Samadhi state. Anyway, now comes to the last sutra of the third Prakaranam, 3.9. Tadasankheya Vasanabhish Chitramapi Parartham Samhatyakaritvat. Tadasankheya Vasanabhish Chitramapi Parartham Samhatyakaritvat. So, what happens is, now we understand that the Chitta, which is not the original Chitta which was created, but the Chitta which exists today, that is an assemblage. It is an assemblage of many things which are the perceptions, previous perceptions, current perceptions who are taking place, and memory of the previous perceptions. All this assemblage, it is colored with innumerable desires. Tadasankheya vasana bhischittramapi. It is colored or it is made up of many desires. But this chitta, though it is made up of desires, that Chitta is not meant for the desires, it's meant for the Drashta. So Chitta is the slave of Drashta. This is 4.24 in the original Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Tadasankheya vasana bhischitram parartham sauhatya karitvat. Now it is an assemblage, and that is why it is a slave, or it is meant for the Purush. So anything which is combination, it is always meant for something else. So even in the material world, as soon as there is a combination, it is meant for something else. For example, computer is an assemblage of CPU, screen, keyboard, mouse, etc. This assemblage is not meant for itself. It is meant for somebody else to use that assemblage. So any assemblage is always meant for somebody else or something else. And in this case, Chitta is an assemblage of perceptions, etc., which is meant for Purusha only. So Chitta looks like an assemblage, but it is actually meant for Purush. It is meant for Purush means the purpose of the Chitta is for the Purush to see. And if one wants to, so Purush is constantly seeing them. And that's why we know the Chitta and Chitta Vrittis we know. We also know the perceptions and desires we know. But we do not know the Purush. So to know the Purush, all this has to be stopped. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Chitta Vrittis should be stopped. Modifications of the Chitta should be stopped. Even the past modifications which are done with the past, they should be stopped. Then Purush will be known. Tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. That's the next sutra in Patanjali. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. Anyway, that will cover later on. So currently we covered what the Chitta is, and we know that Chitta is assemblage of things. It is meant for the Purush. Chitta is not self-luminous. It cannot know itself. Only Purush is watching it. And in order to watch the Purush, in order to self-realize or to know the Purush, Chitta Vritti should be stopped. And Chitta should become totally devoid of Vrittis. As soon as Chitta becomes devoid of Vrittis, there is no purpose of Chitta. Chitta is useless. So as soon as Chitta is useless, Purush, there is no point in Purush watching the empty Chittam. So Purush will watch itself and self-realization take place. That's a Samadhi state. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. Now I will wait for few minutes for any comments or questions, and otherwise I will stop. Namaste. I don't know how to see who is watching this. I can see your comments. 53 minutes are over, so I'll give 7 more minutes for question answer session. Vikram Thomar, Chitta Bhumi, effect on Chitta Prakarana. I don't understand what this means. Maybe I should write to Thomar. Know what he means. Okay, no more comments, questions. 4 more minutes. Three more minutes are there for 1 hour. I'll give another 3 minutes. Okay, 1.5 minute left for 1 hour. So it is interesting that it took almost exactly 1 hour for this chapter. Same thing happened last time. I didn't plan that way. This happened. One last minute left for discussion or question or comments, whatever. Okay, now it's 1 hour. I'm going to end this live video. Namaste. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.